Well, I've been in a lot of homeless, well, not a lot of homeless shelters, but I've been in shelters for a long time.
Meet Stacy McCormick. She lives at Open Arms Housing in Washington, D.C., an organization that provides housing and a community for women who have been chronically homeless.
Even since I was little, my mom had to drag us around from shelters. I remember that. And being in shelters wasn't where I should have been. It's not where I should have been. It's not where I wanted to be. Well, I would always stay to myself and sit in one chair um, all the time, just and wonder when I was going to get the heck out of there.
Open Arms Housing owns a building, the Dunbar, that provides 16 women with their own efficiency apartment with a kitchen and a bathroom, as well as community rooms. Activities include art classes and door decorating competitions.
Open Arms takes a housing first approach to getting the homeless out of shelters and into stable homes.
Part of the philosophy of the Housing First is, give people a space to live in and then wrap the supportive services around them and get them the access to treatment.
The city of Washington, D.C., which has a homeless population of about 11,600, has adopted a housing first approach as well.
We know we have to make an investment in more affordable housing. We have to make investments in permanent supportive housing. We have to invest in rapid rehousing with a real focus on services and doing it in a housing first way.
The U.S. has a homeless population of over 578,000 people. President Obama's plan to end all homelessness in the nation, called the Opening Doors Initiative, is built upon the Housing First philosophy. Meanwhile, the 2016 presidential candidates have proposed no such plans, nor mentioned the housing crisis as an issue of importance.
The need for a plan to end homelessness in D.C. and throughout the nation is because housing costs and the amount that people make for a living have not risen together.
Housing costs have risen at a faster pace than household incomes, and the consequences of that have been most felt by low-income families, since minimum wage has not kept up with inflation, and the median rent over the past 20 years or so has gone up more than 70%. So low-income households have not seen their wages increase much at all, while they've seen their housing costs increase a lot. So the gap between housing costs and income has gotten bigger and bigger.
What we see out there in the United States right now is an affordable housing rental crisis. That there are 7.7 million low-income households who either are paying 50% or more of their income in rent, are living in substandard housing, or both of those things. And those families, by the way, are families that are not on any government assistance right now.
The Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, provides several types of affordable housing. Most widely used is the Housing Choice Voucher Program, which allows participants to choose where they live. The participant pays 30% of their income for rent, and the voucher pays the rest. This is the federal government's main program for providing affordable housing, and is administered locally through public housing agencies.
While housing choice vouchers may be effective, the government is not providing enough vouchers to aid the population that needs them.
It's a sad fact that 1 in 4 households that qualify for housing assistance actually gets housing assistance. This means that 3 out of 4 families are often waiting a year or so to receive housing units or vouchers.
So we understand how the government helps people live in affordable housing. But what is the best way to help the homeless get off the streets and into affordable housing?
Andrea Ingram is the director of Grassroots, a homeless shelter in Columbia, Maryland.
The maximum stay here is 6 months, so we'll be working intensively with those families with the ultimate goal of permanently resolving their housing crisis. The concept has always been that you work with people and help them deal with some of the challenges that they have, and then you help them get into housing and you provide supports for them to stay there. Housing first is when you just forget about all that, you just help someone get into housing and maybe give them a short-term subsidy, and then spend that time helping them develop the skills they need to be self-sufficient. There's a lot of return to homelessness with that. It works sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't work. If housing first is the model that you choose, then you really need to plan on long-term support for these families.
The debate concerning Housing First is that participants must be supplied with the long-term support necessary to keep them from returning to homelessness, rather than short-term support, which may not be sufficient for helping participants create the skills necessary for gaining stability.
But programs like Open Arms, with 95% of all residents remaining housed, demonstrate that Housing First, with long-term support, is effective.
Open Arms has certainly made a difference for Stacy McCormick.
This is the sad part. This was what's going on in my mind from me being homeless, from me going from shelter to shelter, from street to street, from pillar to post. These lines represent all the turmoil I've been through in life. And here is the happy side, is where I am now. And I call this Where. That's the name of this. Where I've come from and where I am now.
The U.S. needs more people like Stacy, people who were once homeless and now have a place to call their own. So, to the 2016 presidential candidates, what are your plans for ending homelessness, and how will you keep the homeless housed?